Welcome to another episode of Command Control Power. Good to be back with you here, Jerry. How you doing so far this fine week?
Doing great. We had a little bit of a
Nice.
cold snap here.
I
By the
heard.
time you listen to it, the cold snap will be over. So
Yep.
all is well.
We did too. I mean, you mentioned in a recent show, well, it's we don't get the kind of snow you guys get in Colorado, but we have not had any snow until like a week ago.
Wow.
A little bit, so it was like well into actually I think we had one very minor snowstorm like toward the end of January, or sorry, toward the end of December. But it was very late. It was like the latest, first snow in quite a while. But we had some last night, and so it was nice to see. Nice to see the snow in the morning, and
And you're in Boulder, Colorado, for the
that's
folks
right.
that don't have the Wikipedia entry for that.
That's right. So yeah, so we're good. It's nice to see the snow, but I can't complain about 50-degree days, 60-degree days. That's Fahrenheit for the international listeners or anybody outside of this country. But yeah, that's warm. It's beautiful days, so we're certainly enjoying the warm days, but also nice to see the snow. So yeah, I see you in your hoodie there. So it must have gotten a little cold lately.
It's to hide the jowls.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
You might have to cinch it up a little bit farther to hide the jowls,
Right.
but so yeah, we have a little bit of a grab bag today, I think. I've been there's a few things I'd like to talk about. Maybe some network stuff that's been just on my mind. There's some announcements from Ubiquiti. Nothing too pressing to talk about, but maybe it's a good segue to talk about some Ubiquiti things. I
Yeah,
guess
let's
one
talk
of the
about that router.
Yeah, let's do
Do you
it.
want to?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Unify Travel Router,
Hmm.
UTR, as they're calling it. It seems to me it's equivalent, like in my brain, it looks like a MiFi device. You remember those old like
Yeah.
MiFi they called them? Yeah, I don't know if they still make them, but it's like a hotspot. So the Unified Travel Router has, the option for cellular built in. Am I speaking out of
I
turn?
don't.
I'm pretty sure. No,
No,
it
that's
doesn't.
not
No,
right.
it doesn't.
No, it either
Rewind. Delete that.
it
Yep.
has to co-opt it from your phone.
Yeah,
And that's one
that's
of the
it.
big criticisms. And the other
Right.
criticism is it's Wi-Fi 6, I guess.
506. Okay,
5.
whatever. Yeah. I think well, I'm sorry. You might be right that it's 6, but it's 5
Mhm.
gigahertz. So it's, it could have
Right.
been 6 gigahertz. I mean, Wi-Fi's, what are we talking about lately? I think Wi-Fi 8 is like, in the preliminary announcement at
Yeah.
CES or something. Like there's,
Hmm.
it exists. It's like technically out there, although Wi-Fi 7 is still like in the process of being ratified. So, I mean, this stuff is all over the place, and it reminds me of when Unify released the Swiss Army knife. It's like a device they called, it's let me see if they still call it that while we do some live research here. But it was a device that came out like relatively recently, like in the past 2 years or year, and it was also like limited in Wi-Fi spec, like a Wi-Fi 5 device, and it looked great in spec, until we realized they call it the Swiss Army Knife Ultra. So it was like you could repurpose it for outside use or inside use. There were different kind of mounting options and antenna adapters and things, and it was only $89. And you think, wow, this is really, really cool. Oh, here's the catch. It's Wi-Fi 5. And so it was like basically already outdated in theory when it was released, and very much reminds me of the travel router. Very reasonable price, very cool design, looks versatile, but yeah, limited, like you said, to I guess it is Wi-Fi 5 and
Right.
5, or sorry, and 5 gigahertz specifically with that one.
And the big selling point to all the boys and girls listening at home that haven't seen this product yet is that if you have a Ubiquiti setup in your house and you're visiting the Azores, um, or the Azores, depending on what side of the pond you're from,
Uh-huh.
you can be on your network simply by connecting to, let's say, the hotel Wi-Fi with this
Right.
Ubiquiti travel router. And then with the magic of the software, all of a sudden your server, your headless Mac Mini in your rack is local.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so it's like, a little portable site-to-site VPN
Right.
appliance.
Or
Yeah.
a client that you're
Or
providing secure support for.
right. Yeah, I mean, it seems cool. I don't know what else to
Hmm.
say. Like it seemed appealing and cool. I thought of it, of course, in my use for how do I travel? Well, sometimes I travel in the van. We do road trips. It would be nice to have kind of a stationary, like stable Wi-Fi. Wherever we go, there's always the same Wi-Fi there, and so
Hmm.
it seemed appealing for that reason. It can even you can connect, I think, one camera to it, which is interesting. So again, for the van, I'm thinking, do I want to look a security camera or something?
Yeah.
But
So
it
you
does
could
have
be,
some
you know,
limitations. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Perfect use case. You set up the security camera in the van.
Hmm.
How would you broadcast that? You might leave a phone behind,
Yeah,
maybe that has cellular, and
or
then
like
you,
that MiFi device, and then you plug it in in theory, you can bring a
right,
hotspot and plug it in by USB and have it stay connected that way, or cellular,
right.
or
And you
Wi-Fi.
and your wife are traveling, but you're in a theater and you're at
Yeah,
a show or you're in a restaurant. And you want to make sure the van doesn't get hustled at all.
yeah, sure,
Yeah,
yep,
that's it.
exactly.
There's some real
Yeah.
strong use cases for it.
What I liked though of the recent announcements was the Unify. Let's see, it's one of their cloud gateway products, so it's the newest one. It's the Dream Router 5G Max
Hmm.
Ultra Pro Plus. No, sorry, just Max, 5G Max, and it includes, like I was incorrectly stating earlier, it has the 5G built in this case, and so you can actually plug in a SIM card or use the eSIM, which is a new feature from Unify, to connect directly to cellular. So this, to me, would be a more appropriate one potentially to have like an all-in-one unit in the van. Now, of course, it's not meant to be powered like in a mobile setup like that. It expects to be plugged into an AC outlet. We have that. We have an inverter in the van and all, so we can do that. But it's more if power efficient to use either USB-C like the travel router uses, or some kind of DC adapter of some sort.
Hmm.
So I could potentially get the 5G Dream Router 5G Max, and like wire up some kind of custom power source is what I was thinking, because again that gives you some more features. Like that lets you, it has one PoE port built in, which is nice. It can manage other devices from Unify, like a camera or whatever. And it has the 5G built in, so that it's again a situation where they don't make exactly the product that I like thought I wanted, which is something that is really efficient with power consumption. Maybe can be powered by USB-C, acts as a gateway, can run, control a camera, and also has cellular. This one gets the closest, I think, even comparing the travel router. Um, but I wanted to mention also the new 5G. Um, what do they call it? Sorry. Um, it's the Unify. It's the replacement for the. This is great radio. Sorry, Jerry. It's a replacement for the Unify LTE Backup Pro.
Hmm.
So there's now the 5G. So they call it, I guess, just the 5G Max. Um,
Right. I've seen that. There,
yeah,
and they make an indoor one and an outdoor one.
exactly. Isn't that interesting that they actually
There
make a
it is.
separate
And as a
model?
matter of fact, as timely as today's headlines, I purchased the outdoor one when it became available.
Oh,
Scooped one
interesting.
up really quick, not for my own use, but for a
Okay.
client. And we haven't deployed it yet because right now, the eSIM, no, they told you to, the advice on the website was to use a physical SIM. So what is that called? A micro SIM?
Nano, I think.
Nano SIM,
Yeah.
right? And to not use the eSIM, although it does have that
Yeah.
capability, they
It
said
does.
for better reliability. And right now, it's only offered for AT&T, but they said Verizon will be coming available in January. So we're in January right now, and that's what we're waiting for before we install it for the client. Is because he has a Verizon contract and relationship with them, and we could probably get this on his plan and make it more affordable.
Right. This is a new feature, and it's good to put this out there because previously, as you and I know, there was the
Hmm.
standalone, Unify LTE backup, which was automatically, it came with an AT&T SIM, and you pay through Unify. So easy setup, but kind of expensive data. It's really meant for just like a worst case scenario backup. And even in that scenario, I think there's a limit. Like it might be 20 gigs. Like you actually just can't go above that with Unify One,
Hmm.
even if you want to pay. Then there's the LT Backup Pro that I mentioned, which is what I had been using here at my home office, which, like you mentioned, was AT&T only, which is how this 5G Max started out. But they do support, in theory, any carrier with the 5G Max. And like you said, they're rolling out support, where like in other cases it may work, and they're not ready to fully support it yet, as far as I know, or maybe that's just a recent announcement. But that's the first chance that you have native first party cellular backup from Unify supporting other carriers. There's some really interesting options out there. So I don't know if you've played with any of these MVNOs or so basically an MVNO is a mobile virtual network operator, I think is
Hmm.
the term. And so they piggyback on an existing cell network like T-Mobile or whatever the case may be. And they're probably deprioritized to a certain degree depending on the plan you have versus the first party, I believe. Like,
Hmm.
if you're on T-Mobile, you probably get priority service depending on your plan on T-Mobile. And then these piggyback off of, again, the primary carriers. And I'm not sure if you always get the same like full quality speed and
Hmm.
reliability,
Right.
but you get much better pricing. So, for example, there's one that I looked into. Um, Go ahead.
Was this
What
to
area?
replace your LT Pro that are you still using that in your home? Because that's what I'm using here.
Yep. So I actually did get the 5G Max in, one of the rare cases, like you mentioned, where it's available. Actually, it is available right now. Again, I think it just came
Hmm.
back in stock. 5G Max, the indoor one or standard one, not the
Hmm.
outdoor one currently. And so yeah, so I bought that and I migrated my AT&T SIM card. I actually wanted to do like kind of I wanted to test it with the eSIM and I wanted to test it with Verizon and just play with different options to be able to sell it to clients. But I decided let me just set it up for my with my AT&T to start, just so I can play with
Okay,
the hardware. Yeah.
couple of questions.
Okay.
So one of the benefits to having this standalone LTE Pro
Hmm.
failover from Ubiquiti is that if this is placed somewhere internally in the home or in the business, you may not get optimal cell coverage because you're in a maybe a concrete building. So in our
Good
case,
point.
we have it positioned by a window. Now, if we had purchased the product that you're talking about, we would have to make absolutely sure, whether it was for a home or a business,
Hmm.
that we were getting at least 3 bars of cell service with the provider that we choose in the location where it's going to sit.
Yes. Good point. Yeah. Yeah. Very good point.
So, how about
Um,
you? So,
Yeah, so the old one that I had, the LTE Backup Pro, had the ability to plug in an external antenna. So the solution
right.
there would be like you could actually, wire it into your network in one location where you can see the screen, et cetera, and then like run a, antenna up to the attic or something. In either case, I mean, you can also just like run network cable to where you need the thing. So, to your
Mhm.
point, it's pretty flexible. In fact, for the indoor model of the 5G Max, they actually have this like window mount. Did you notice that where you can
I
like
didn't.
stick? There's like a some kind of bracket that uses, I think, those command strips or similar type, sticky adapters that are removable to like stick the bracket to the window. Literally, just sits in the window, and then you can mount this thing right to that bracket because to your point again, like you get the better signal sometimes like right in the window versus like on a shelf somewhere, on the other side of the
Mhm.
room or whatever. So yeah, I just stuck it up on a shelf and it's like fine. I don't really need to worry about because this rarely happens, but I want to be able to just stay online and keep my whole
Mhm.
home network
Sure.
online, as obviously, but I don't need necessarily like tip top speed. But it's 5G and I get great speeds. I can't remember what the test was, but on the order of, 50 or 100, megabits
Yeah,
download.
that's
So
great.
it's like great. Yeah, exactly. Um, Now for an office, you have to really like measure the traffic, and you can do that in the Unify interface. You can get a sense of like how much traffic your client is using on a regular basis,
Mhm.
because you want to plan this stuff to see like I'm recommending a backup internet, in case the network is down. as you know, in the Northeast, and I think like almost was it nationwide? Verizon had an outage here as we speak,
Hmm.
mid-January, just a few days ago, and it was down for like the better part of a day. So you really want to see like if you're during business hours totally down your primary ISP and you have an office full of people using the internet, like what kind of traffic do they typically use? Um, in my cases where I've estimated this, it's a lot in some cases. Even some high-end residential homes where they have, a home theater and like, three different Macs, all downloading updates and whatever. I mean, they can use a significant amount of data where you would eat through that 20 gigs, that measly 20 gigs from Unify pretty quickly. And even some of the carriers that offer 25 or, 30 or 50 gigs, you might be bumping into that limit with just one day of outage.
Right.
So I looked into alternatives. Yeah,
Streaming, backing up to
exactly.
back blaze. You have to make sure those are all disabled
Yeah,
in a case of a
exactly.
long air outage. Yeah.
Right. And, to avoid having to do that, to me, it seems, best to try to come up with an option that, you don't have to really worry about that.
Right.
So I did some research. There are some companies out there that, again, offer like data SIMs essentially. So, again, that's what you want is a data SIM. You don't want like a standard cell plan or whatever. You want to be able
Hmm.
to find a data only SIM. And there is a company that I found for specifically for low income. So you have to like self-certify that you're low income or whatever, and then you can get this data-only SIM card for pretty freaking cheap. The company is called computersforpeople.org. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. That's how these companies exist, with these reasonable rates. Is that a lot of times they're a nonprofit and their sort of like aim is to provide internet for underserved communities. And so again, it's a nonprofit offering data service for lower income folks, and they have a data only SIM card you can simply buy, and it's like $14 a month, like just under $15 a month, essentially, with whatever fees and things.
But how does that benefit you or me or anyone listening to the show, either personally or
Well,
for the business?
you may want to get this and test it out. I mean, I'm certainly not using this as my primary internet, so this would be for me to see like how does this 5G Max, device support some random SIM card that I might want to throw in there. And I
But
do
you
work
said
with,
you have to
yeah.
prove low income. How do you
Yeah, well, no,
reconcile?
well, you just self-certify. So I'm not planning on using this device. I'm just planning on testing this out. It's worth the $15 investment for me to buy a SIM
Oh, I
card,
see.
basically use it for a month or two, just again for testing out, because it's an easy, again, cheap way, no contract, just to like test this. Can I get
Sure.
a SIM card working in this thing that's not kind of one of the standard big carriers.
And it's an
Um,
eSIM that you're going to get,
well, in this
right?
case, it's actually a physical SIM card that they're
Okay.
mailing to me. I do want to test the eSIM card, but I couldn't find any that seemed reputable to me that were like, a provider of an eSIM for data only. And I'm not really sure, you might have to search for like an eSIM for a hotspot or I don't know. But it may be less common because most of these little mobile hotspot things, I don't know. I think they're probably designed more with SIM cards in mind, but I could be wrong. I just couldn't find anything, easy enough. Um, so for $14.89 from this computersforpeople.org, they offer a 5G, 4G and 5G data plan, and with a physical SIM card. On 5G, you can expect between 72 and 245 megabits download. That's insanely fast. I mean, for cellular coverage.
Sure.
Upload speeds 15 to 31 megabits, they say. Latency between 19 and 37 milliseconds. All very usable speeds. And on 4G, it's 37 to 119 megabits typical download speeds. Upload is like 7 to 24 megabits. A little bit higher latency. There's no charge for there's like it's basically unlimited data. There's no charge for additional usage. They say that if you're using so it does say this during congestion, customers in this plan may notice speeds lower than other customers. So again, this is like where you are in the priority essentially. And then if you use, and it says, and further reduction if using greater than 100 gigabytes per month. Okay, that's due to data prioritization. So they call it unlimited. They're never going to charge you more money for, service like gigabytes above 100 or whatever, but they may slow you down. But 100 gigs, in my estimation, is very usable. So I do
Hmm.
work with, for example, like a nonprofit that would probably qualify for this. And, there are some low income clients. I know we talk about sometimes, a lot of the clients we serve are higher income, wealthier
Hmm.
people doing the types of work that we're doing. But there are clients out there that are lower income. So it's worth knowing about this one. And I'm interested in hearing from anyone else who's played with data only eSIMs, especially, or any other, physical SIMs for that matter,
Um,
out there. Yeah.
and the name of that company is just
C-
for,
computersforpeople.org, and that's the number four.
okay.
Clever. And they have this, affordable internet plan that I just
And do
mentioned.
they tell you whose network you're on?
It's T-Mobile is
I
uh,
see.
is is
You
the
may have
kind of
mentioned that. Excuse me for not
backbone.
hearing that.
No, I'm not
Yeah.
sure if I did, but yeah, it is T-Mobile. Um, what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, okay. So then the back to the 5G, because this is what's available now. Like you're waiting on the outdoor one coming in, and I have the indoor one, the 5G Max. It has two nano SIM slots. So there's also an eSIM, and if you do use or activate the eSIM, you don't get the second nano SIM. So essentially, you have like up to two carriers also, which I
Hmm.
also thought was very interesting. That's the first time Unify has done that. So to be able to say, you know, I assume what I can do, and this is again what I want to test, um, you know, activate my AT&T as my like failover, maybe burn through up to say whatever. I think I don't know, pay for 20 gigs or something like that. Use the 20 gigs on AT&T and then go to this, backup to the backup. So it seems pretty clever what they're now introducing here.
So if you're a prepper like you are,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
the end of times is coming, you need as
Yeah.
many SIM slots as you possibly can get.
Yeah, I don't want to go without memes or bad news. So I definitely like in the end times, I want I just want to stay connected. I
Yeah.
really need
Yeah.
need that news feed drip.
Interestingly, on a parallel conversation with data sims, uh, we have a daughter who is actually coming home this Friday, but she spent the last 21 days in Cairo,
Oh
and
wow.
AT&T International plan is pretty darn expensive. So I've for business, I've done this on shorter trips. You're away 7 days. It's $12 a day, kind of
Yeah.
steep, but it's unlimited. You can call, blah blah blah. So that wasn't going to be that wouldn't scale well for 21 days.
For that long.
So
Yeah.
I checked a couple of websites, a couple of reliable websites according to ChatGPT, and the one
Hmm.
I settled on was something called Olafly, or spelled Holafly, and
Hmm.
it's only designed for travel eSIM.
Okay.
Uh,
Nice.
and they don't send you a data sim, as far as I know. It's just an eSIM that you get in the mail within minutes of you buying, choosing, or picking off the number of days. So you have to choose wisely. So if you buy an eSIM and you need to add a couple more days to it, you can't do that. It's just like a one-shot deal.
Huh.
They send it to you electronically, but there's no way to modify that. If you decided to extend your stay longer, you'd have to buy another one from them.
Okay. That's
But
interesting.
very reasonable rates. She has had great success with it. We turned it on, and I showed her, how to enable it. Once she got on the plane, she turned off cellular data, and it's worked really well, even in Cairo
Wow.
for Find My, is working. Messages, Apple Messages, but we are using, of course, the lingua franca in every other place in the world except in the United States, which is um, you know that app, WhatsApp.
WhatsApp. There you go.
That app,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and WhatsApp doesn't work for business because you could say, well, I could do this for my business. Well, you can't, because it, it you can't make an outgoing call to anybody. They have to be a WhatsApp member, and WhatsApp, it's free, but if I wanted to call you, Joe, you'd have to have your own WhatsApp number, and I'd search for it
Yeah.
either with your name or your phone number. And if it's in the database, then I can call you direct. But I could send you an invitation if you
Right.
weren't. But this wouldn't scale very well for a business if you were going to try to do this on the cheap. You would still
Right. For you mean
need.
for you to call a client back from Cairo or something like that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Okay.
I think one of our phones, on our next travel trip, will have this, probably mine. But then, for my wife and our other daughter, I'll just buy eSIMs for them from the same
Yeah.
company. Oh, and the one thing that was really advantageous about dealing with this particular company
Hmm.
is there was another reputable company, but they wanted a little bit too much information. They were asking
Hmm.
for more personal data than I was comfortable releasing to them.
Hmm.
um, it wasn't passport information, but it was home address, that kind of thing, beyond the credit card. So
Okay.
Olafly is just like, you know, give us your payment details and we're all set.
Yeah.
We're going to do business with you. And I got it
Okay.
right away. It installed in minutes. Now you probably have done this. I'm telling you this, but you're
No, I
pretending this
actually
is all new.
haven't. No, no, no,
Mm-hmm.
I really haven't. So I have for the last like several iPhone models, ever since the like maybe it was the 10 or 11 where they supported dual SIM. The first iPhone to support dual SIM, two physic was it? Yeah, two physical
Mm-hmm.
SIMs, I
Yeah,
believe. Was the Max only, or whatever the bigger size was called at the time.
sure.
And so because I'm a prepper, like you said, and because at that time was nomadic and, kind of traveling and relying on cellular, it was a good investment for me. And that was my earliest experience with it, but only ever with the two big carriers in the US, AT&T and Verizon. Um, because my wife happens to be on Verizon and so does my employee, so I kind of have that plan on like one account. It was easy to add my own phone to that for some incremental cost. And I have an AT&T plan for my phone and for I think and for my cellular backup. So it was easy for me to use both carriers, and that's been really handy. Where you just like those are the two big carriers with two kind of distinctly different types of infrastructure. And
Mm-hmm.
so there are cases where like Verizon doesn't work and AT&T does, or vice versa. And it's just nice to have both built into my phone. But I've always been meaning to experiment now that they also support, or I guess now only support eSIM, to play with the options you're describing, where you can basically just like swap in a different carrier for like your second line or even your primary line, and experiment again with some of these MVNOs, because you can get really cheap plans, maybe fast enough service. If I just need data, that seems pretty easy to do. Um, Speaking of all of this and prepping and all that, although it's not really prepping, I mean, I guess I'm prepping by having two cellular carriers. I mentioned this in a previous show very briefly, but I want to throw it back out there as long as we're on this topic. It's called Speedify. It seems like a pretty corny name, but it's speedify.com. And this allows you to essentially use multiple internet connections at once on iOS. What?
Hmm.
It's pretty weird. But they use some kind of really clever technology to, to basically let you. This is what I think Apple should have built in. Like I have Verizon and AT&T. I think it should do a better job of determining that, hey, AT&T is slow. Yeah, we have 3 bars or whatever, but like it's just dropping packets or it's slow. Let's try Verizon. Hey, that's faster. Or hey, they're both pretty slow, but if we combine the two, then you'd get really good speed. So it just seems to me like Apple should be able to improve the performance or give you this option to essentially bond those two connections if you have two SIMs. And that's
Sure.
exactly what Speedify does, as far as I can tell. In fact, it's even more clever than that, because you can have friends that are all going to, say, a concert together or something like that. And you can all have Speedify. So maybe you've got one friend on T-Mobile, one friend on Verizon, one friend on AT&T. And, so let's just start with those. Everyone using Speedify, it essentially bonds those three connections together and lets everybody share in that combined bandwidth. And so the example they give is, an influencer at a sporting match or something like that, where, you're trying to do a live stream from this big event where there's, 10,000 people and the network is really degraded and, no one can get a signal, but,
Mm-hmm.
because you have Speedify and you have a couple of friends with you, really get the best of all worlds in that way, and you can make your connection and maintain a faster stream. In fact, there's an example where you can use the USB-C adapter to give your iPhone an Ethernet port, and then plug Starlink into your iPhone, so you can actually have a wired connection to Starlink to your iPhone, And apparently Speedify can take that Starlink connection plus either and or AT&T and T and Verizon to like use whichever one is best or use all of them together or whatever. And again, if you have friends that are also on Speedify, like apparently, you can share like that Starlink connection with everyone else. So really clever stuff. And I had no idea this was possible. So somebody's got to have tried this. I'm really curious about it.
And Speedify, there's you pay for it and it's software.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like I assume like a configuration profile that,
But
deals with network routing or
and
something.
is it a one-time charge or is it monthly?
Um, it's I don't know actually. I didn't get that far offhand. Let's see.
Okay. But and then you would have to get your own separate plans to aggregate this data.
Well, yeah, I mean, presumably you might
Yeah,
already have like, I have my phone on AT&T, you have your phone
sure.
on Verizon, whatever, and like we combine forces. So you can here's their options here. So for individuals, you can pay simply $4.99 per month. Or they show it's actually, well, that's the pricing for a 3-year plan. So it's $180 billed every 3 years. Unlimited, data, whatever, quote unquote premium server access, because I believe since it's a bonding thing, like it has to
Hmm.
essentially like go to like they all have to have an endpoint somewhere in the cloud to
Hmm.
put all that together.
I see.
So I believe that that's why there's a like ongoing fee for this, and that you can use that on up to 5 devices. So you can pay as an individual, and you can carry your iPad with cellular, and and one carrier, your iPhone with two other carriers, and my understanding is you can combine all this stuff together just by walking
Okay.
around and having this
And
enabled.
they don't have to be physically tethered. They just talk to one
That's right.
another.
Somehow, yeah, exactly. They talk to each other somehow, and I don't know if it's like I join your personal hotspot or you join mine kind of thing, and then they talk and route traffic. But that's why it's on my agenda at some point to play with this in the real world. But I'm just really curious if somebody has put this to use at a client yet.
Yeah, prepper's dream. Now,
Yeah.
how would you put it to use in a client? Maybe
So I mean,
for a client, right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
not in a client setting in an office, right?
Right, exactly, because it's not, well, at least what I've been referring to so far is more like mobile use. I believe there is something like where you can use quote unquote Speedify for routers I see on their website. So I assume that's like bonding, like I used to do back in the day with PepLink and PepWave products
Hmm.
where, I had my mobile, two cell connections on my mobile router that were like connected to the router back in my office. And so that's dedicated hardware where I guess Speedify technology can also work. Maybe it is appropriate for a client in that kind of scenario. Again,
Okay.
maybe where they have Starlink and cellular, but no real like stable, wired internet. And so you
Okay.
maybe want to have this. Yeah.
And I'm a simple caveman.
All right.
So it would have to be, let's say you used it in a business setting, uh, Speedlink for Speedlink, right? Is that what
Speedify. Speedify.
Speedify for
Yep.
a router?
Hmm.
They would be have to be comfortable with paying for two separate data plans all the
Yeah.
time.
Yep.
Okay.
Totally.
Yeah. So
Yep.
it's not for everybody.
No, not at all. I mean, they have a yearly router plan. So this includes, it says activate your powered by Speedify router. So I believe, it's going to have to be compatible with Speedify. It gives you 1 terabyte of data per month for $25 per month, but this is billed yearly. Or you can get a plan with 3 terabytes of data per month for 37.50 per month, essentially. So that
Mm-hmm.
just to give you an idea of what those plans would be. And again, this is for like speeding up a connection where you don't have a really fast primary ISP available and you only have cellular, or you have Starlink and cellular, and you just want to have it all work together as one thing.
I see.
That would be the idea there.
Um, very, very interesting stuff we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Um, you know, not having anything to do with communication in terms of speed,
Hmm.
but in prepping for this trip for my daughter to Cairo,
Hmm.
it was not that long ago where you could call up your if you had an American Express card, you could call them up and you could say, I need to buy currency, and they would send you currency through the mail.
Yeah.
Uh,
Interesting. Huh.
and they don't
Was
do
it
that anymore.
traveler's checks or like physical, like, paper currency?
They would do both. as
Wow.
far as I knew. But they could send you euros if you needed to get euros, right?
Got
So
it.
then I thought, like, because she had no money when she hit the ground, and even though credit cards are ubiquitous and are used everywhere in the world, they said have walking around money.
Yeah.
And things are very, very inexpensive, evidently in Cairo. Like you could
Hmm.
get a meal for, a dinner for $10,
Okay.
10 US. But some of the smaller places, the mom and pop places, they'd prefer to just simply get the cash, and you could barter for things, from street vendors and stuff like that. So we wanted to get a little bit of walking around money. So I said, well, no problem. I've got a Chase card, relationship with the Chase bank,
Hmm.
commercial bank. Went to Chase. Chase is like, no, we can't. No,
Hmm.
they could send some types of currency, but Cairo uh, was not on their list in terms of
Okay.
whatever. Yeah, and there's a number of, so a very, very small handful of, you could get doubloons from Chase, but you can't get
Okay.
Cairo.
Nice.
And I forget
Yeah.
what they call it.
Yeah. I was
The
trying to
Cairo.
remember too. Yeah. Cairo
It's
bucks.
yeah, it's something very, very simple. It's not like some unusual name.
Okay.
So um, so I didn't know what to do. Like, and the thing that you want to sort of impart wisdom on your children is
Hmm.
like you don't want to use the exchange booth at the airport,
Right.
unless you want to get a shave and go to the cleaners,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
shave and a
Exactly.
haircut.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So here's the crazy thing. So there's a place online, and you
Hmm.
just, you could do a transaction, and they FedEx you Cairo bucks. So
Yeah.
the place we
Good.
used, and again,
Egyptian Egyptian pounds. That's what they're called. Just for the record, I just looked it up
pounds.
for you. Yeah,
Perfect.
pounds.
Thank you,
Egyptian
Joe.
pounds. Yeah,
Yeah. So
they
we're
ship
not
you Cairo bucks in FedEx. Nice.
exactly. And the company is called Currency Exchange International. There's
Okay.
another company that does it. So their URL is CEIFX. So Currency Exchange International FX.com. And they don't need to, they're not requiring to get a lot of information from you. So there was another one that was, again, recommended by ChatGPT, but they wanted too much information, too much
Yeah,
personal information. And this was like, nah, we'll take your credit card. And it was amazing. Like I think it
wow,
was like they were going to deliver it in 2 days, and we got it the next day.
that's crazy.
Yeah. And it was just like a big pile of pounds.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's wild.
Yeah.
Wow. And with no paper trail, as you seem to prefer here, you don't want to tell them who you are, just mailing address. Here's my credit card. That's
Yeah,
all
I
you
mean,
need to
just
know.
right. The other one was like, I think they wanted like some form of ID, like you had to send them
Like,
a picture of your
yeah,
license. I didn't want to do that, or a
no,
passport
yeah,
number, like both those things. If I don't need to give those to you, I'm not going to do it. And I would have had
yeah,
to, yeah. So it worked out really, really well. I mean, in terms of just like who knew, because
yeah,
I was still operating, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I'm calling up American Express. No, we can't do
yeah.
it. I'm going to Chase. So
I did the same thing a number of years ago as heading, planning to head to Spain, I think for one of my rooftop tech support sessions there. And so I I walked into my Bank of America local branch, that I usually just use the ATM, but, there's a branch. So I walk in. And I think they told me at the time, like they keep very little, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, third party cash,
mhm.
international money, whatever, on hand. And you have to like kind of like coordinate in advance and say like, hey, I'm gonna need 100 euros like next week, and
Mhm.
they'll figure it out on the back end, and then it arrives in a truck or whatever. So yeah, it just takes more planning. But like we're saying earlier, in most cases, the advice is just use the ATM, and you get kind of like the standard exchange rate with typically no fee, depending on your bank. So that's what we would do is we would just go get some euros out of the ATM there, just using like my Bank of America ATM card
Sure.
at whatever random ATM that we found on the street in Spain. So that's usually a good way to go. But if I were sending a kid there, like you're describing, you don't want to send your daughter into Cairo with like no money to her name. You want to
Mhm.
make sure she can like get a cab or like whatever in
Right.
case of any issues. So definitely makes sense to go get it ahead of time. So you did that in the country before she left for Cairo,
That's
essentially, or
right.
was she somewhere else?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
No, no. We did it here and
yeah.
got it.
Nice, Nicely
And I
done.
think I'm not sure if they take the money back. I think you could send them currency back, FedEx it to them, and they could exchange it back for US because it doesn't really make too much sense to be sitting on
Yeah,
Egyptian pounds if you're not going to be going back there anytime soon.
totally. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Exactly. Yeah, back to the network things. We're talking about this sort of like travel considerations and things. Shifting gears more toward like security in terms of networks.
Hmm.
It just occurs to me sometimes. I think about what are the issues that like someone might be concerned about. Someone, like so, a client has a bunch of data on their computer. They click, some shady link. They do some stuff, and maybe somebody has access to their computer. What are we concerned about? Well, they can exfiltrate information like passwords and things. They could also just start like siphoning off data. That would be one of the threats that I'd be concerned about for our client. It started, occur to me like, shouldn't that just be built into the network? So if your Mac is typically, sitting in a, on your desk in a corporate situation or whatever, all your traffic is going through the network. For that matter, there's a server, maybe in some cases, an on-premises server that's connected to the same gateway. Couldn't the gateway keep track of like what a normal day looks like in terms of traffic? You've got, like you were saying earlier, updates, downloading from Apple, your screen sharing with somebody remotely on a video conference. So you've got like, SSL traffic through, going through Zoom or something like that, on the upstream, whatever. That's the baseline. And maybe for that matter, that's across lots of different, client instances. So Unify, for example, could just kind of know what normal traffic looks like. Like we're going to allow Zoom without issue. But if suddenly some, like a bunch of data starts being uploaded to some unknown location, can it just flag that? Maybe even stop it, depending on your settings, but certainly alert an administrator like, hey, there's a massive upload happening here. Jane's Mac started, sending a bunch of data to, best web coupons deals dot ru or something like that. Like you'd
Hmm.
want to know about that. So I don't know if there's a technical reason that makes this difficult. Like if it's all encrypted by SSL, maybe it's really hard to kind of know what's happening. But again, the raw upload bandwidth going to some random location, like it seems like that would be a flag that we should have is like a Unify notification or threat kind of alert. What do you
I
think
think
about that?
with a router with web-based management like Meraki has,
Mm-hmm.
I would think that that would be a lot easier for them to deploy something like this. Or a little checkbox that you would like to have this
Right.
enabled, and what do they call it? Heuristics, right?
Yeah.
Looking at something over time
Right.
and
I think that's
identifying
the one.
patterns, and then
Yeah.
if there's some sort of an anomaly that crops up, I would think at a very short amount of time with just all this AI
Yeah.
smartness that's going to be baked into a lot of things we're going to start to use. Probably this is not too far away, but I would think for the short term, a company like Meraki probably could do it
Hmm.
almost immediately.
I guess. I mean, I'm not sure why there's a distinction between, like Unified Portal, managing from like a central location that way versus like a local, web interface to a Meraki device or something.
Well, it would have to be something baked into the software already, right?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. I kind of wish like Unify would just build this into their, their network app or whatever
Stack.
stack. Yeah, so that it could just literally send you an alert like Jim's iMac just started uploading, whatever it would say, a large amount of data to Dropbox.com or something, or just to
Hmm.
Dropbox. Like it would recognize, okay, there's data being uploaded to Dropbox. And then, that would be a flag. You'd get an alert. It would let it keep going. Like it's not going to stop it, but it's going to alert the administrator. And the administrator could say, oh, yep, sure enough, they just got a new computer. It's doing its thing, whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
Versus like, hey, that's weird. What's happening here? Or it's uploading to some third party site that's just unclear. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's technical reasons why it'd be difficult, but it seems like that's a very practical, like, threat vector, kind of remediation or mitigation.
Can't you identify or specify on clients on the network? Can't you cap their data That's
Yeah, I
probably
think
another way of doing it, but I
it's a
believe
good
that's
point.
probably there already.
Yeah, just like overall, like no one should ever use more than, whatever number of gigabytes per day or something.
Sure.
And but I mean, it's hard to tell. Like in my examples, as I'm like, thinking this through, it's like, okay, there's a bunch of, data being uploaded to XYZ website. Oh, well, this photographer just came back from a shoot and,
Hmm.
they imported all this stuff and now it's syncing to whatever they happen to use, Dropbox or something.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it seems like there should be a way potentially to kind of keep an eye out for that. Jerry, did you notice in with Text Expander lately, it wants access to control other apps. Have you seen this prompt yet? It'll say, you'll go to fill in a snippet, and it'll say, TextExpander.app wants access to control Safari.app. Allowing control will provide access to documents and data in Safari app and to perform actions within that app. And then they actually have a little explainer as to why Text Expander is asking for this, because this does seem to be new. It says get improved snippet expansion in certain apps by allowing access. And then they give you this more info. See automation permissions and text expander help for details. I haven't granted this access because I don't
Hmm.
just willy nilly kind of let these random apps, you want to keep it in a little bit of a sandbox. And that's why Apple has this stuff. But, um, web browsers are pretty like have a lot of data, so I don't need a random app to have full access. But um, have you noticed that yet? I'm just curious if anybody
I
out
have
there.
not seen that alert.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I'm not surprised, but I don't know what advantage. I mean, I use Text Expander a lot,
me
but
too.
just for the same repetitive things like thank you for your business,
Same.
an
Yeah,
address, something like that. So I don't need it to be this
yeah. That's
robust tool
exactly
for me. Hmm.
that's how I feel too. I mean, I just, it can still just expand what you type and just plop it into the whatever website or wherever whatever app you're in. That's how I use it as well, mostly for those quick like you described, for me it's like like please let me know if you need any help. It's like
Hmm.
that's a phrase I use all the time, so I just have like my little shortcut for that. um, you know that's probably a good example. There's a bunch of like little phrases we often use. So this is like a segue to discuss this thing I mentioned a while back about how I use the omega symbol. I mentioned this character on the keyboard. So you've probably seen ohm, like,
Hmm.
in your headphone research and audio
Yeah.
stuff, whatever, right? It's a little, I think the ohm is that
Sure.
symbol, that omega
Yes.
symbol. So, maybe people know what that's like, but I mean, how would you describe that? It's a little, I can
It's
draw
like
it.
it's like a
Yeah.
horseshoe with
Yeah. Like,
like
yeah. A horseshoe with little like finial tail things or something. Like, yeah,
yeah. What
that's a
do they
good way to
call
look
those
at it.
in the font world? Glyphs with glyphs on the end of it.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
omega. So basically, how do you type the omega character? Well, I know this for one very specific reason. It's Option Z. So
Ooh.
how often do you type the omega character?
Never.
Never. Yeah. So I use this as my text expander, like prefix, basically. So this is the way I use text expander, and I think this might unlock this for people out there. How can you? Because you got to remember what the shortcut is. So the ones they give you built in are like if you want to expand, if you want to like plop in the date to wherever you are, you type D date, right?
Hmm.
Do you use that one? I've
Not
made a
too often,
couple.
but yeah.
Me neither, and I didn't like the default formatting of like it's spelled out fully. January
Hmm.
20th, comma 2026. So I made up a couple of others like DD date. Like so, if I want to just have like the date in month slash day slash year with the full 4-digit year, like that's the way I prefer in my note taking and stuff. That's the way I do it. So fine, that works for date and time. I think there's one for time. There's some built-in ones that I can kind of wrap my head around, but others it seems like how do you think of what the shortcut is to be expanded into the full snippet? For me, I just needed like something I could always type. So it's the omega character and then whatever it is that I'm typing. So the one I gave earlier is help. So omega help. And it just expands to please let us know if you need any help. So that's easy. If I'm sending a paid invoice to a client, I have a snippet for that. So I do omega paid and it's, gives me my little snippet for that. If I send an invoice that was applying prepaid time. I have a snippet for prepaid time. So little, Option Z, prepaid. And I don't have to type in prepaid time applied, all set or whatever my snippet says.
Right. Or sometimes this is a great idea. Sometimes you have to get really clever and it's like, oh, what was the little combo I did for that? And you have to
Exactly.
sort of memorize all these. And what you're saying is because this is, you just, it's the prefix, it's the universal symbol. And then in a short little real world word,
Exactly.
it, you don't have to worry about memorizing your shortcuts,
Exactly. I
what
don't
they're
need to
called.
type, paid invoice, all one word kind of thing,
Right.
or
That would be one
remember a
way of doing it. Or
phrase.
sometimes, yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes you use abbreviations. I think that's more common. And that's sort of like what they um, lean into is, for the date or whatever, is
Right.
to abbreviate in some way rather than a long
Yeah.
description of it. But this is a great idea.
Yeah. So I encourage
This
you
is
to
why
just
I
give
listen to the
give
show.
give that a try. It's a tip you might not hear on, Mac Geek Gab or one of the other,
Oh, yeah.
because I know you listen and and you listen for the tips there, and I'm sure there are plenty. But we have our own tips that we use in our line of work, and that was one that just I don't know came to me. I thought this is easy to type. It's kind of like a modifier. I mean, it is a modifier key, the option key, right? But it's not typically used for like a keyboard shortcut, unless
Hmm.
it's combined with command or usually command. But option Z is like about it's the character. The Z is right next to the option key, so it's really easy to type that. You never type it for anything else, and again, there's no space, so it's just like omega and whatever the single word is that describes the thing you're trying to. And the snippet could be for me like a whole form letter thing that's like an appointment confirmation thing that I want to just manually send sometimes to a client or whatever. So
Hmm.
yeah, Option Z and whatever your snippet is and shortcut is, and yeah, Text Expander, great software I've used since the beginning of this show, if not earlier than that. So it's
Right,
been around
right.
a while. Yeah,
And we think that Apple actually uses it internally as well.
supposedly
Um,
that's right.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's what we've heard. Um, this doesn't have to do with travel or tips,
yeah,
but and I can't remember whether I've actually mentioned this on the show, but I was reviewing things to discuss on the show. Did we talk about the fact that if you don't link your Venmo account, if you use Venmo as a way to pay people and do, you're out for pizza with buddies and you want to
yeah,
split the tab, right? You could Venmo somebody and not use Apple Pay. Is if
sure.
you don't link it to your bank account, they charge you $10 per transaction if you link it to your
Really?
credit card. Yes. So
Ah,
you
that's crazy.
so
Yeah,
you never want to link it to your credit card
right.
because it's nuts.
Yeah,
Every transaction
yeah.
gets this $10 surcharge.
That is pretty nuts. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense if you're just splitting a pizza with, with some friends or
Right.
whatever. That's It reminds me of I mentioned on a recent show. I finally got set up for ACH payments. To receive
Mm-hmm.
ACH payment from a client, which is probably easy in a lot of people's billing systems. In mine, it's not really a built-in feature. I mean, certainly it is built into Stripe, and I can manually process it, but it's not built into my what I call practice management software Repair Shopper to be able to accept Stripe-based ACH payments. So I talked about it in a show, I think a lot on a Patreon episode. So if you're listening to this public show and you want a lot more behind the scenes on this, sign up for our Patreon and you have all these, this private feed of all those special shows. But I detailed how I got this all connected, and I've recently processed a few of those um, charges. And so the way I do it, because I have to manually charge that in Stripe, I just take payment for 3 months at a time. And I've had a couple of clients agree to that. And it's amazing when you see a $5 charge on an invoice for like months of work, whereas the credit card fee, to your point about like, Venmo or any other, is astronomically high compared to that. So my credit card fee would have been like $200, for
Hmm.
like a recent invoice. Again, multiple months of service, whatever. And instead it was $5. So
Hmm.
it's nice to keep that balance in your pocket. So again, I would just encourage any of our listeners out there, our colleagues, to give it a try. I mean, credit cards are great. The client gets points for those kinds of purchases. You're basically paying for those points or those, refunds or percentage off or whatever that they're benefiting from. And they're useful in a lot of ways. They protect you against, certain types of fraud and things. Not knocking credit cards, but if you can keep the differential between, again, it goes from like 2 or 3% of the bill to you just keep that 2 or 3%, and
Right.
you pay all the $5 or whatever. It's way better.
Yeah, ACH, that's a great tip. ACH sometimes is a tough sell with a client because they feel
Yep.
like, they're a little less control on the security of their money.
Sure.
And they also feel like, oh, well, it's a credit card. So if I want to contest the charge, it's easier to do that than to do it through my bank because the money's already taken out of my bank. So
Right.
sometimes they don't, even if they trust you and they've known you for years, it's not always the most warm and fuzzy. And
Yeah.
then sometimes I've had these conversations and they're like, no, we'll just pay you by check then. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, okay.
That was my, of three that I've pitched this to, the third one said, well, we don't give our bank account info to anybody, and I was like,
Right.
well, it's in Stripe, it's industry standard. Nope, I don't care. It's not, I know I'm not giving it to you, but like, we don't give it to anybody, basically. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
essentially, like you're saying, we just want control. I said, fine, and they said, how about if I just send you a check? Great. So they sent me a check again for 3 months prepaid because I don't want to sit here and receive checks every day and run to the bank and all that stuff. Or, fine, I have mobile deposit. I just don't want to process a lot of paper anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm making that exception, but I've just basically said it's my policy for these types of plans to get paid by bank transfer. And again, check is kind of the just in case they don't agree to that. And that for me was also a negotiation with one of these clients where they wanted to save some money. And I said, okay, I can do this and that, but we're going to require payment by ACH because that just helps.
Mm-hmm.
They know that helps me save, 2 or 3% on the credit card fees. So I
Sure.
can, if I'm going to give them a discount, I'm going to want to, not pay a fee on that. So.
Right. Of course.
So any humorous, encounters lately, Jerry, to wrap us up here as we near the end of the show?
Well, I'm sure I know you're an avid reader, Joe, and I know you've read Dante Alighieri, his
Have not,
um,
but Inferno or
Inferno.
yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Dante. I know you've read that multiple times,
No, I
and
have
he,
not.
and
I
so
live it
he.
every day, Jerry. I don't need to read it
Well,
pound for
I'm going to tell
table.
you about another. So he talks about the rings of hell.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Dante's in Inferno.
yeah.
So the latest ring of hell is uh, Amazon has disassociated, for the most part, their relationship with the United Parcel Service. And when I would
Hmm.
return things from Amazon, because I buy a lot of stuff from Amazon for clients, for myself, for the home, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
If I had to return it, I'd print out the label, put it in a box, bring it down, to the local drugstore who is a receiver for UPS products. It was great. No fuss, no muss,
Nice.
done and dusted. Now, if you don't want to pay any money to return it, you have to
Yeah.
go to Staples and you have to
Staples.
stand in line like an animal
Yep.
while some Staples employee takes your stuff, puts it
Yep.
in a bag, seals it up, gives you your receipt. And
Been
it's
there.
just, yeah, around the holidays, it was just the worst. It was just
Yeah.
the worst. And even so they do have some relationship with the UPS store. For $1, they'll let you bring it to a UPS store and you still have to stand in line and give it to somebody. However, if you want a UPS label, you have to pay full price. So like
Right.
$5.99 to ship a small item
Yeah.
out of pocket against whatever credit you were getting back. So it's a
Right.
lose-lose proposition.
Now, did I miss? What about Whole Foods? Do you have any near you? Because to me, that's always been the easiest option. Just walk into Whole Foods. You don't even need to have it in a box or a bag or anything. You just like hand
And
them.
and just throw it over the deli counter and they take it.
Pretty much, pretty much. I mean, there's a
Hmm.
different. You probably don't want to go to the deli counter in this case, but it's like there's actually. I'm pretty sure. I mean, there's one main store that I'm thinking of, but I think there's usually a counter for this, like a specific
So yeah,
spot
I know they had lockers, Amazon lockers,
and
but
and lockers. Yeah.
my
Hmm.
wife does the shopping at Whole Foods, and I think she said, "Oh, I think they could take it at Whole Foods, but it's not convenient. It's
Yeah.
it's it's miles away.
Okay.
It's in Milford, You know
Yeah.
where
So
Milford is, and you know where I live.
yeah,
It's not
true. That's
close.
far. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not the drugstore down the street here.
No, exactly. I mean, I guess I'm spoiled. I've always had Whole Foods like near nearby. But they're so prevalent, and I think this is really why I mean. I'm very cynical about the like merging of everything into one, in terms of like
Mm.
corporate America. There's a lot of, negatives to that, but this is one of those positive outcomes is that you have really super easy Amazon returns if you have a Whole Foods nearby. And guess what? You can do some shopping while you're there. So it works for them too. But, certainly the convenience of literally walking in. I swear I've just handed them like a bare internal hard drive like as is. They don't care like the packaging, was damaged or whatever. Like they don't even want that. They just take whatever you hand them, the product itself. So it's really
It's a
simple.
great country, isn't it?
I know. Yeah. Yeah. Anything we
By the
can do to
way,
encourage more capitalism and more consumption, yeah.
By the way, Scott Galloway, professor at NYU, that was his
Yeah.
stock pick for the coming year is to buy
Yes.
Amazon stock because they are so heavily invested in robotics that he
Yep.
thinks that their stock is going to skyrocket. They're letting employees go, and that's not good for
No.
people
But
and jobs. But they're the amount of expenditure that you heard the same podcast, I
I
guess,
did. Yeah.
that they've
Yeah.
done on robotics, and so that's
Seems
his
pretty
stock pick.
smart.
So
Yeah. Well,
I
like
don't
you
know if
said,
that's our stock pick, but
no, yeah, you don't come here for stock advice, but I heard the same one, and that is I have the same take. It's like not great for everyday people because we're automating more and more jobs and so on. But like yeah, that's good for the stock market, which is
mhm,
which is really what everything seems to be good for these days. So
except Trump.
um, yeah, well, that's all over the place today too. So anyway, thanks everybody for listening to another episode of Command Control Power. We really appreciate our patrons, especially who make these weekly shows possible. And there's a lot more besides the weekly shows that you hear on the public feed. There's also the private feed for patrons and the live
That's right.
stream for patrons where you can participate. So find out more at commandcontrolpower.com, click on support, and pledge on Patreon for all the extra content. We really appreciate you listening to Command Control Power, and we'll talk to you soon.